Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving deep into the hidden reality of our workplaces and introducing a truly transformative lens for understanding organizational health. We're going to explore a wealth of insights derived directly from leading analytical models and research to fundamentally rethink how we view management.
So let's jump right in. Have you ever been sitting at your desk and just felt like a mere cog in the machine? And no, I don't just mean that feeling you get when the office coffee maker breaks down again. Think about those daily workplace rituals we all perform. Do they sometimes feel like they're designed way more for the machine's benefit than your own? Most of us are taught to just accept corporate jargon and rigid workplace structures as the way things are. But today, we're unpacking source material that suggests a completely different reality. You see, there's this massive illusion we often buy into, that management is purely a neutral, sterile pursuit of efficiency. We just assume that rigid hierarchies are unchangeable laws of nature, kind of like gravity. But if you've ever questioned why certain voices in your office are perpetually sidelined, or why productivity often just feels like a polite word for exhaustion, you're already brushing up against the invisible rules of the office. To break down this hidden reality, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover 1. The invisible rules of work. 2. How management is about power. 3. Why the status quo is optional. 4. Moving beyond just making profit. And finally, 5. Sparking innovation through critical thinking. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the invisible rules of work. To see what's actually happening beneath the surface of the modern office, we need to put on a new pair of glasses. The core of our source material today revolves around a concept called critical management studies, or CMS for short. It's basically a diagnostic tool, a lens that cuts right through the surface-level polish of the workplace to reveal the underlying structures of control. It is essentially the diagnostic tool that leaders didn't even know they were missing. Engaging with CMS is what shifts us from being mere administrators just pushing paper to becoming thoughtful professionals who truly understand the environments we operate in. Let's look at the stark contrast here. Mainstream management theory usually masks itself as this value-free pursuit of best practices, hyper-focusing on neutrality, efficiency, and profit. But look over at the CMS column. CMS argues that management should actually be viewed through the lens of power distribution, social equity, and ethical leadership. The sources highlight that caring about CMS means moving beyond a narrow focus to consider the deeper human and social impact of exactly how work is structured. Moving right along to Section 2, management is about power. We have to understand that management is literally never neutral. This crucial point is captured perfectly in this insight. CMS shines a light on how power operates within organizations. It examines who holds power and whose voices are often silenced. This highlights how CMS asks the really tough questions. It doesn't just ask, how do we get this done faster? It asks, who actually gets to make the decisions here, and whose interests are ultimately being protected? Building on that, our analysis of the source text reveals that unexamined management practices can actually reinforce some pretty severe systemic issues. We're talking about gender inequality, racial bias, class divisions, and even corporate dominance over local communities. If we ignore these power dynamics, we risk blindly participating in systems that prioritize corporate dominance over the psychological safety of the people actually doing the work. Which brings us to Section 3. The status quo is optional. You know, the things we consider standard business practices are actually choices shaped by very specific values. As this quote points out, what we often see as normal management is actually steeped in historical, political, and social choices. Honestly, this is a total paradigm shift. Things like constant quarterly growth or rigid reporting lines, they aren't inevitable facts of life. The sources point out they are rooted in specific ideologies, like neoliberalism and managerialism. Recognizing that the normal was built by people means that people can also choose to build something entirely different. And this table brilliantly illustrates exactly what we mean. Let's walk through it together. Under traditional practice, we have something universally praised, like teamwork. But look at the critical lens interpretation. An organizational psychologist might view teamwork not just as healthy collaboration, but actually, scratch that, potentially as a form of subtle control, where peer pressure drives self-exploitation under the guise of company culture. Rigid reporting lines become exposed as socially constructed hierarchies, and the very term human resources is critiqued for treating living, breathing people as mere technical inputs to be optimized, basically as if we're just another batch of printer toner. All right, Section 4, beyond just making profit. Here's where we examine why the traditional focus on short-term profit often comes at a massive cost to ecosystems and human communities. The source material argues CMS critiques short-term profit motives that harm ecosystems and encourages rethinking business models to prioritize long-term ecological and social well-being. If we're going to have healthy organizations in a complex world, we absolutely have to adopt a much more holistic definition of organizational health and shift away from that whole growth at all costs mentality.
So what does that actually look like in practice? Well, the sources suggest 3 expanded metrics for success that ethical leaders need to adopt. First up, social equity. This means actively prioritizing and amplifying marginalized voices, not just settling for surface-level diversity. Second, ecological well-being. This requires regenerative practices and questioning infinite expansion. And third, human dignity. This involves designing roles that foster creativity and self-actualization, rather than treating humans as disposable machinery.
And finally, Section 5, innovation through critical thinking. We're going to see how CMS is way more than just academic complaining. It's actually a practical engine for radical innovation. And the key to this whole thing is a concept called reflexivity. Now, while standard reflection is just looking back at what happened, reflexivity is looking at the mirror itself. It's questioning the very assumptions and biases you use to make sense of the world. A manager practicing reflexivity interrogates their own role within a system. This allows them to handle real-world moral dilemmas with nuance and ethical awareness, instead of just blindly executing a layoff because a corporate manual told them to.
By breaking the efficiency-only mindset using reflexivity, leaders are finally set free. The sources highlight that this creates space for incredible, radical alternatives. We're talking about worker-owned models, social enterprises, post-growth business models, participatory decision-making, and flat hierarchies. This isn't just theory, folks. It's about building resilient organizations that demand social justice and ecological responsibility over blind bureaucracy. To summarize our deep dive into the sources today, critical management studies really provides a crucial framework. It invites students, workers, and leaders alike to step out of that purely technical, robotic view of work. It challenges us to become socially accountable and to reconstruct our workplaces to prioritize fairness, ethics, and sustainability. I want to leave you with this final, kind of provocative thought. If efficiency wasn't the only goal in your organization, what value would you choose to create tomorrow? Think about how reclaiming your agency and questioning what's normal might change your own impact on the modern workplace. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this fresh perspective empowers you in your own work environment.